So now that we know what R is and how it looks, we're going to take a moment and fill out which values are which. So pause me and fill it out, and I'll pause you and do the same. All right, let's do the right-hand side first. So we could see that this one down here is R equals -1 because the ducks are all in a row, right? Perfect negative correlation. And then up here is the strongest one on the negatives, so that's -0.94 because the points are really close to a line. That leaves you these two, which are both pretty awful, honestly, in their own way. But this one right here is a little bit less awful, so it gets the -0.54. You can see that there's a relation, and you've got this low point down here, which is kind of pulling it along. And the distance between those is not very, it's not as bad as this one, which is -0.33. But honestly, these two are both so bad that it's not the end of the world if you guessed them the opposite of what they are. They're both pretty terrible. All right, now over here we know that this one's this one's perfectly 1. This one's the strongest one out there for positives besides the 1, so it's got to be the 0.85. Down here you got 0.42 and 0.17. Ugh, this one's awful. Look at all the points all over the place. So this is the 0.17. Because the points aren't forming any kind of nice clump at all. I mean, they're not gauging themselves well around the center line. And this one is 0.42. Again, both of those are really terrible. Both these graphs are pretty horrid. But if you take the line out of it just for a second, just imagine there's no line here. Do you see how these points form sort of a circle? That's not a relation, right? That's how I know this one's the 0.17 and this one is the 0.42, because if you take the points, you take that line out of it, you can still sort of see that there's kind of a direction there. It's going a little bit up. This one's just circular, so that's terrible. Okay. Same thing with this. If you take the line out of it, you can see the lines forming, or excuse me, the points forming a line more readily in this one than you can in this one. Okay. Remember, you want the numbers to be bigger in magnitude. So -0.54, excuse me, is better than -0.33. 0.33 is terrible. It's close to 0. Same thing here. 0.42 is better than 0.17. All right. Now let's find this with Excel, actually. We're not going to compute this by hand. No, sir. That's going to take way too much trouble. So we're going to use Excel to do this. So let me bring up Excel. Hold on. There, and I copied and pasted those numbers into Excel. Now, Excel actually has a couple different ways you can do this. We can also do it in StatCrunch, and I'll show you both. So if you're in Excel, you want to highlight, well, you don't even need to highlight the data. You go to the Data tab, click on Data Analysis. Now, if you don't have the Data Analysis portion, if you don't see that over here, it means you haven't turned it on yet in your options and add-ins, things like that. You should see the tool packs up here in active. If they're not active, you got to go make them active. All right. So you can click Data Analysis. We want Regression. There it is, Regression. And it's going to say, what's your Y range? Notice the Y's come first. So put the Y's in first. And I used my highlighter to do it. And then there's the X's. My top row is labels. So I'm going to click labels because I've got that free reduced lunch thing up there in the top row. I'm going to have my output. I'm going to click on this little field right here. I'm going to say cell E1. That's where it's going to start. And you have a choice. You can actually have it do all sorts of plots and stuff for you. We'll do that later and say OK. All right. Now the R value is right here, more or less. The issue is that this is actually a negative relationship, and you can tell because the slope down here is negative. So you have to know that R is actually negative 0.68787, right? Not positive. That the Excel will never show plus or minus, so you'll have to gauge it yourself. Another thing you can do is just go Insert, Scatter Plot, and you can see that it's negative that way, and that lets you know that it must be a negative 0.687. Okay.